Unexpected Journey, Memoir of a Siberian Deportee by Juzė Avižienytė-Žukauskiene. Translated from Lithuanian and narrated by Giedrė Kumpikas, niece of the author, and by Isabelle Kumpikas, the sister of the author. Chapter 18, Our Own Chata. Our landlord became even more sullen. In the chata, there were now 2 sick people and our youngest, so that there were constantly 3 outsiders. My husband began to look for some way out. The chairman suggested we buy our own chata. Easy to say, but for what? The hundreds that I had brought with me were simply melting away, and we were paid nothing for our work. Besides, the only 2 working were the 2 lude, my husband and my son. And of the 2, one was practically still only a child, a boy of 17, who had never done any physical labor and was constantly hungry and weakened, and the father, a war invalid of the Lithuanian army, having lost 50% of his work capability. According to the words of Nekrasov, the family is large, but only 2 men, my father and I. But the chairman kept on urging us. Don't worry, I'll recall message, and you will come to an agreement. That message was one of the workers of this collective farm, who had been sent to the farms about 12 kilometers deeper into the taiga, where there were small plots for grazing and where fodder was being prepared for the winter. It was not possible to bring the fodder out of there since there was no road. Therefore, a part of the cattle was being kept there on the spot and was being tended by Message. After a few days, Message, who had been called back, arrived. The chairman said, "You want to buy my chata?" He began the conversation while rolling himself a cigarette. "Yes, we do, only I don't know how we will come to an agreement." "So, what do you have? I don't want money. Do you have any clothes or fabric?" Upon seeing our silver-plated samovar, he jumped. "That piece you will give me. Maybe you have some men's shirts, some boots, and some clothing for my old lady." Message started counting. We were inexperienced. We did not know here the value of our things, and that chata he was offering was a real shack. The walls were bent from the flood that had passed through last spring. Instead of a foundation, there were wooden beams, since here there were no stones. The roof was covered with birch bark, warped and cracked from the rain and the sun. The windows were only holes, no frames, no glass. Of the stove of beaten clay in the corner remained only a pile of slimy dirt. The floor was rotten. It was good that I was still sick and could not get out of bed. If I had seen that palace which was being offered for our things, I would probably have talked my husband out of buying it. At least, if there had been a roof, at least shelter from the wind. But here there was nothing. But our landlord and the chairman kept urging us. "It'll be all right. We'll fix it up. We'll help. We can push the walls back in place, and we'll patch the roof up somehow." They mentioned who had some birch bark, which they had peeled off that spring. As for the glass, it'll be more difficult. And the stove, it's not like it was before. We have our own brick factory. A deal was made. Our beautiful samovar went to its new owner. Besides, from my suitcase came a 3-meter-long piece of fabric, my silk dress, and 2 of my husband's shirts. Message, although he tried very hard to hide his glee at having tricked the fools, could not succeed, and the chairman stated that the seller must treat everyone. When the other collective farm workers learned how Message had robbed us, they came and began to tell us how stupid we had been to have given so many of our good things for such a miserable hovel, which would have collapsed within a year without a kopeck, for who would buy it? The chairman also got his cut, my new winter coat, but it was up to him to assign repairmen and issue needed materials. Needless to say, we also had to be good to the team leader and somewhat to those people who were assigned to work for their work days. Since the compensation for work was not in money but in work, that is, our work days were transferred to the one who worked for us personally. Those work days, all that time, were worthless. The collective farm was not able to settle its accounts with the government, therefore they practically did not have the means to settle with us for our work days. A person working for nothing is sluggish and unwilling, but when he gets a little something, his mood is quite different. To whom and how much to give advised the chairman, who was experienced and knew his people and their customs well. My poor husband had much worry, much running around, and much hardship. I was surprised at his inventiveness and his business capacity. Everywhere we paved our way with the things loaded on for us by our good-hearted soldiers when we were deported from Kaunas. What would we have done had we only taken as much as the checklist allowed and as much as we could carry ourselves? Finally, on the 4th day of October, they transferred me to our new abode. I say transported since I could still not walk by myself. Although my temperature would jump only to 38 degrees centigrade, 101 Fahrenheit, but the malaria had weakened me so much that I could not stand on my feet. My muscles had atrophied, my head felt dizzy and was unbearably heavy, and my legs felt as if they were of cotton. But, dear God, who could describe our joy and contentment when we settled into our own home? No one to give us sullen looks, to make reproaches that we were encroaching on someone else's very much needed space. In the mornings, my family would go to its separate way. My husband and my oldest son to work, both younger ones to school. What a joy it was when on the 3rd day after our move, I got out of bed and without holding on to anything, walked to the table and after resting to the stove. Many people would run over to congratulate us on our moving. Even the commandant himself and the chairman of the collective farm paid us a visit and in honor of the occasion issued 10 liters of skimmed milk from the farm. My training continued. I was becoming stronger. Nobody here was growling at me. I was free. But again, the same worry. What will we eat? My poor husband, having begged the commandant for permission, walked to other farms to trade our things for something edible. Sometimes he would bring back half a kilo of butter, other times a pail of potatoes, or a handful or two of flour. Every day, my good Dr. Shakieniene would visit me with the hospital assistant Pogson. The latter, having noticed my leather riding boots, began to ask me to sell them to her. At one time, when I lived on the farm, I had purchased them because I used to ride quite often. When I moved to Kaunas, even though they were not needed, I could not throw out such a valuable item. And when we were being deported from Kaunas, my good soldiers, secretly, when the checklist was not watching, slipped them into one of the bundles. And here they were such a necessity. What could I answer to my benefactress for all her care and medical attention? How could I refuse? For even now, I was still lying in the bed she had lent me. She could not put them down. She herself was wearing huge, rough, homemade pigskin boots. Mine were like dolls. Only my big foot will not fit into them, she said regretfully, but still offered me 200 rubles. In Lithuania 6 years ago, I had paid 12 litai for them. Don't worry, they only look small, but they are quite roomy. Try them on, I offered. She took off her boot. Her foot was wrapped up in a heavy bag-like cloth. Well, of course, with this wrapping it won't fit, and I gave her some stockings. Who could describe the woman's delight when she saw that her big foot fit and felt comfortable in the elegant riding boots? Ask as much as you want, but I am not taking them off. You won't need them until the winter, and in the winter you'll need felt boots. Without them, you won't be able to leave the chata. Sell them to me. I'll even give you flour and potatoes. I get a flour ration, and I plant my own potatoes, she begged me fervently as she caressed the boots. I had to accept. Food was more important than the boots, even though they were the last ones. Notes. Ludai, the plural of the name Ludas, meaning 2 men both named Ludas. Kopeck, Russian monetary unit, 1/100th of a Russian ruble. Litas, monetary unit of Lithuania.